The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Steven Scatch here again with my co-host, Mike Liskey, and our special guest. So 9 in 10 parents believe playing sports helps children build character and teaches essential life skills. And families are spending more time and money than ever on youth sports because they see it as a path to confidence, community, and developing grit. And what is often overlooked is that behind every great team environment, there's usually a very intentional system, culture, and sometimes even a business model if you look close. The best programs are not just teaching skills on the court, but designing experiences that help people feel connected and supported in their growth. And today, we are exploring what it looks like to build real community and connection in a modern business, drawing lessons from the world of high-tech sports training and franchising. Mike, introduce our special guest today.
Yeah, delighted to, Steve. It's going to be an exciting show. Our guest today is Craig Moody. He is the founder and president of Shoot 360, the world's premier high-tech basketball training, competition, and entertainment platform. In fact, in 2012, Craig opened the very first Shoot 360 location in Beaverton, Oregon. And his passion, knowledge, and experience in the game have really fueled Shoot 360's progress in developing one of the most technologically advanced and impressive basketball training experiences in the world. Following Craig's leadership and vision, Shoot 360 continues to test really the limits of what technology and innovation can do in basketball. And Craig has been a successful business owner and entrepreneur, as well as a head basketball coach and administrator at both the collegiate and the high school levels. So he brings a ton of unique experience and lenses to how to really create environments where people want to, and this is really important, right? Learn, compete, and belong. And so, Craig, we are so delighted to have you on our show today. Welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast.
Thanks, Michael and Steven. It's great to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share about what we're doing.
Excited to learn about it for sure. I know we're talking about connection and, kind of the topic of community. So is there like a personal connection for you to the topic of community?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a couple things. I think kind of growing up, I realized at a pretty young age that a big part of sports, and I call them the universal languages of sports and music. It's something that is really all universal to all of us. Mm-hmm. That sports was as much about relationships and connection as it was about the sport itself. We all end up retiring from sports at some point in our life, and what we're left with are the connections and the relationships. And so that's always been an important element to me. My grandfather shared that with me when I was young, and I think it just kind of stuck with me. You want to compete hard, but you got to remember that whether it's on your team or the teams you're playing against, those relationships can be lifelong.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, Craig, when you're thinking about building community and connection in business through a platform like Shoot 360, what does that mean to you, and how does that come out in Shoot 360?
Yeah, so I think, again, kind of drawing on my sports background and the culture that I've always wanted to have in our businesses is, there's an old saying that a person's name is the sweetest thing that they'll hear, right? So when you're known and you connect. And so what I've learned about kind of the environments that we want to create is the environment is as important as what you're actually doing in the facility. And so if I walk in and people care about me, and I always tell our team, when we run a facility, all the members are really part of our team, and we want them to have great connection with big hellos. We want to encourage them. We want to make sure that when they're leaving, they had a good workout and that they're off to the start of the rest of their week, or their day. And so for us, environment matters. And we always say that people come for the tech, they stay because of the people.
Mhm.
Yeah, tell me a little, so I wish I had what you guys have built when I was a kid. For us,
Yeah.
it's what I could go to maybe like some pro, like, Magic Johnson used to have like a coaching camp once a year, and it was like 5 days thing.
Yeah.
You had that, or you had maybe pick up basketball. We didn't even have YouTube back then. So you had to just watch and visualize. But I would have loved to dive into what you guys have. Kind of describe the environment for someone so they can picture what you guys are offering to in the training area.
Yeah, so I'll explain what kind of kids do here, but the way that we're set up is kind of our specialization, if you will, is we use machine vision to track the ball. And ultimately, that the three disciplines that we work on are shooting, passing, and ball handling. We believe those are the key fundamentals for someone to be able to excel in the game. And so our primary focus has been to give them real-time feedback so that they can make adjustments while they're training, and then provide all the data and analytics so that they can measure progression. What we do know about the culture that we're in now is that things are more instantaneous. And so we have to really be able to step into that world and not criticize it, but marry up to it and say, hey, we can make this happen. And we can't blame the generation or any generation. It's just where things are in society. So we try to do things. And what we've realized is that gaming is a very big piece of that. So video gaming, the way kids take information in. And so what we try to do is not only do we train these things, but we do it in a gamification environment where they're competing all the time against other players, and they can do that immersively. It's like they're actually in a video game, but everything transforms to the court in a real game. So Michael, you can be in New York, Stephen, you could be in Dallas, and I can be in Portland, and we can all play each other in real time. And we can do that globally. So our facilities in Taiwan or Japan or in Europe or in Canada, we're all interconnected and we can play. So this builds community, and it builds the opportunity for athletes to see the bigger picture and also be in what I'd say the environment that they're used to today.
And so just picturing this, so in real time, I'm getting reps playing sort of this, like I said, a gamified version of this, but I'm getting reps of best practices and fundamentals, right? And getting scored on how well I'm achieving those basic fundamentals, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's all real time. So if you can imagine, I'll just give you a quick example, but shooting is about arc depth and left, right when it gets to the rim. So we know what the perfect arc is, 45 degrees. We know that the perfect depth is 11 inches behind the front of the rim, and we know straight on is the right alignment. But there's a range that you should be in. It's 43 to 47 on arc, 8 to 14 on depth, 3 left or 3 right. If you can put all 3 of those inside those measurements, which we call the splash zone, then you'll shoot 98% or better. So imagine if you're practicing and we're guiding you into that splash zone. So eventually muscle memory takes over. We're speeding up if it took 10 years to become an elite shooter on your own, we're going to take that and shrink it down to 2 years. And because you're progressing fast and you're doing it in an environment that's fun and it's around gaming, where it's real shots, real pressure, real time, then what you're going to do is you're going to stay in the game longer and your confidence is going to build.
I love it. Mike, I could geek out over all this for a while.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm really glad that Craig, mentioned muscle memory, because so important, right? To really build that good muscle memory. It helps us advance. And it's important for us to even build good muscle memory in our businesses. Yeah. So Craig, I'm kind of curious, right? You've been a coach, as we mentioned, an entrepreneur, and now a franchisor. And across all of those roles, what have you really learned about, say, the difference between a transactional environment and really kind of like a true community which you're building today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know Stephen was talking about his daughter being at Portland State earlier, and I went to Portland State for a little while, and I had this professor one time that told me, look, the whole point of building a business, and if you're really building it the right way, is the relationship that you build with your customer, right? And then the relationship that you build with your vendors and the relationship you build with your team. And so what I've really tried to take to it is, whether it's the franchisee or when I was building homes, is to really understand what the customer needs and wants on an individual basis, and then build that trust by being able to really help them or assist them get whatever that goal is. And if you do that in an authentic way where you care, I happen to like people. So it's very easy for me to step into a conversation and want to know more about that person, because not only am I curious, and I think that's a big piece of it, but I'm also, I guess I get excited about learning something new and hearing about different people's uh, interpretations of where they're at. So building that trust, building that relationship, I think, is how you build any business. And then automatically it's not transactional.
Oh, it's so true, right? And man, you touched on many of the principles that we love to follow, like within conscious capitalism. I'm curious, within the franchise location, is there something that you've done, perhaps intentionally, to build that out or build that inside of Shoot 360?
Well, I mentioned earlier that we believe that people come for the tech, but they stay for the people, right?
Yeah,
Because if it's just transactional, like you're saying, and there's just data floating around, and there's no encouragement or any of that. So
yeah,
what we really try to do through our training processes with the franchisee is say, look, it's the combination of the two that make this powerful,
yeah,
right? So we do that in our training inside our facilities, that we say, look, with the moment somebody walks in that facility, we want them to know they care. And then when they're in the facility and they're training, we want them to know we care. And we do that. We say every player that comes in, we're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes with them to help them. Like, can we help them with shooting mechanics? Do we just check on them and say, how was school today? Do we say, hey, that's a great pair of shoes you're wearing, I love it? Like, just connecting with them and building relationships, right? Or do you have a game this week? Or, what are you looking forward to this week? Those are things that have nothing to do with the game necessarily, but the relationship and the trust that we're building. And that's all part of it. Like, if you're
yeah,
just going in to get a transaction done, people sense that right away.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think
Definitely
even
makes
more so
sense.
these days, people are really not looking for that transactional relationship that you can
Right.
get most of the
Right.
times in a lot of businesses. You're looking for something a little deeper. And when you mentioned too, you mentioned the data and then also that emotional connection side, and that we're dealing with that all the time in just any kind of business with data and trying to bring out the authenticity of that business to build that true connection. Thinking about that community is developing, what role do parents play in the community you're trying to build, and how do you bring them into that experience as well?
Yeah, so I'll relate this to my own experience a little bit here. So when my kids started playing competitive basketball, because I had been coaching for a long time, um, I knew the power of kind of vocabulary with kids, and also, like, I think how, and listen, I'm long ways from being perfect. My wife would probably tell you I was crazy at times, but my point is this: if you're building, like, with kids, and you're building, like, kind of where they're going, your the way that you address them and talk to them is so important. So if I belong to a team and my role is to go rebound, and that's what where I can contribute to the team the best. And then I get in the car and I think I did a good job, and coach told me I did a good job. And then I get in the car, and all the way home, mom and dad are going, "Why don't you score more? Why aren't you bringing the ball up the court?" That's not, to me, that's not where a parent can help. What a parent can do is a parent can say, "You are playing your role amazing right now. Are there other things you'd like to be good at?" And then they say yes, then they can provide the opportunities and the resources for that child to do that. For instance, like if they want to shoot better, they can start working on shooting and work themselves into the role of being a shooter on the team. But to demand it without context and not using the right vocabulary behind, like how you talk to them, is where a lot of kids will just leave the game, because not only are they trying to please the coach and they're trying to keep their own self-confidence up, but then if they feel like the parents aren't approving, then the parents they can play a huge role. And this is like with all of us, I've got all adult children now, but what I realize is that they're not painting the vision by themselves of who they are. You're helping them paint that vision. And if you're guiding them and you say this is a process and they buy into that, they love the process. They're not going to games or wherever and going, "I was a failure, I was a success." They're just enjoying that they're getting better and that they have the opportunity to do that. It doesn't mean they shouldn't compete hard. I'm not saying that. They need to
Yeah,
compete
no,
hard. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's like I like the phrase "be a star in your role." I mean, I think that
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
says, compete hard in that one particular area that the team needs you to compete in.
That's right.
Thinking about what I love talking about with franchises is the systems that you put in place. It's very difficult sometimes to have a vision of what you want to build, but to have that across as many locations as you have. Franchises get really good at building systems that help translate that. From your perspective, from a systems perspective, what have you put into place so that you kind of have repeatable practices within your franchise that help build community and connection? Are you doing certain things with training with the franchise owners and trying to bring out that connection? What kind of systems do you have in place for that?
Yeah, so I think we're doing that in a few different ways, and we are an emerging franchise, so we're getting, I think, better and better at that over time. And I can tell you that this year we hired two amazing people out of the franchise world, COO, Jason Carter, that we brought in, that has a tremendous amount of experience in franchising, and then Jamie Esslinger, who came out of is our CMO, who came out of the franchising world as well. And as you build this, you realize how important, as you scale, systems become, not because we want people to be a number or be processed, but because we need to make sure that we can provide a consistent experience across the board in a way that meets our brand's core value of being a culture of encouragement and building something in their community that is kind of a bright light. I just say it that way. And so we're using the latest tools with building videos that share that, everywhere from how we run programs to how we address players. We use FBCs that go in and look at how, those are franchise business consultants that go now and they visit and they see how the environment is and coach people on the environment. And then I think one of the big things that we do every year is we have a franchise conference where we really try to go in, and it's more about it's about direction of the brand, but it's also about purpose and why we do what we do in youth sports, which is far from just being a basketball company.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you're talking about is really like you said, you're emerging franchise and you've got emerging systems. And so you're auditing your systems, right? Continually toward like those values. Is
Yeah.
what you're saying, because you have
Yeah.
coaches going to those local locations, trying to look and make sure that those values are being, expressed. And if not, how do we pull them out better with more consistency? That's what we talk about a lot with, building love into scalable systems, is how can you scale things like kindness and care and connection?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're always trying to pull those out in any way we can in our discussions when we talk to franchise owners.
Yeah, for sure. And it would be, putting the humanity kind of back into it, right? If we came out of with the Industrial Revolution, all these processes and productivity and efficiency, processes are just very cold things in a way, right? But like you're saying, Stephen, putting the humanity back into it puts that. So, Craig, I'm sort of curious, right? When you scale, some locations will thrive, and then others, for different reasons, will struggle. I'm sort of curious, like when a particular market is perhaps not where it could be, or where it should be, like how do you go through and diagnose, maybe what's really going on? Are there systems that help you support, say, the local leaders without necessarily being like overly controlling of them?
Yeah, and that's another thing that happens as you scale out. Like you get a lot of early adopters, and you don't have all your systems in, so you're building that out, right? And so
Yeah.
one of the reasons we did bring Jason and Jamie in is because of that background, to go in and say, okay, how do we diagnose franchisees that maybe aren't performing optimally and trying to get to that next level? And I think that's a bunch of things. I think that's starting with your people and your staff. Do you have you have round pegs and round holes, sort of the best way to say it, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, are the programs that you're executing, are you using the playbook and executing all the programs, right? And then one of the things Jason loves to say is clean, friendly, and maintained. And are we doing a good job of making sure that the facility is up to date, it's operating well, and that when people walk in the door, they're like, wow, this place is really well maintained and clean and friendly. So that's important to us as well.
Within all those systems, how do you encourage like that local autonomy, aspect of it, for them to, have a little bit of freedom to figure things out, and stuff that works for that to kind of filter up back to you guys?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So there's an old saying that McDonald's, they did the cheeseburger, the milkshake, and the French fries, and everything else came from the franchisees. And so I think that's probably a little bit exaggerated, but my point is this: if you're a franchisor and you're not listening to your franchisees, you're making a huge mistake. In fact, we just recently went through and we looked at the revenue categories of these different programs that we have, and we took the top 5 or so in each category, and we went back with our marketing and ops team, and we said, what are you guys doing to make this so successful? And we went in with no ego, no expectation. And then we collected all that information, and then we started building our marketing stack and our program to augment those things that had been proven success points in the field. And we like to say that the answers are in the field, and that's the truth. So yeah, that's so important from our standpoint, that we have an open mind and that we are reaching out to the franchise. And I hope we're getting better and better at that. And we're putting franchise advisory councils together for different areas of the business. I hope that's just something we continue to get better and better at.
Sounds like you're well on that path, and you got some good people there.
We're excited about our team for sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, we mentioned earlier, it seems like technology is plays a very big part in your work. I was kind of curious, where does technology, really make the biggest difference for you in building the connection? Say, it's on the court experience, or giving data feedback, or even, creating engagement outside of your locations. Like, where does technology really make the biggest difference?
Yeah, and I think that's, like, I don't know that I know that completely yet, because we're learning that. as an example, we have an app that gives all the data and analytics that anybody can pick up at any time because it's in real time, and that's an
Mhm.
important piece for people to see what they're doing in progression. They can schedule on it. They can join classes on it, whatever they want to do, right? So that's important. But the way that I see technology is it really, and innovation in general is, I had breakfast with several years ago with George Raveling. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but
Mhm.
after Wooden kind of
Basketball coach, yeah.
passed away, yeah, George Raveling was really considered the godfather of basketball coaches, right? And so when I went and just told him what we were doing, and he's older now, and he was like super interested, and I said, Coach, if you could tell me anything that um, you think would be helpful as we launch out and start to scale this, what would it be? And he looked at me and said, it's to me, it's really simple that whatever you do can transfer onto the court 5-on-5. And so the lens that we use for technology is really, is this going to help the player? And one of the things that I think that I have a little bit, and I don't know if it was just kind of something naturally inside of me or just the way that I kind of learned the game and my journey through the game. But what I've been able to do is because of that comment from him, use that lens. And I think I have a really good feel, and my team does now as well, for what is going to transfer to the court. But when you look at it from that lens, you just see how many opportunities there really are. And this is sometimes overused, the tip of the iceberg, but I really do believe on the technology and innovation side, we are at the tip of the iceberg. And I'll give you just a little bit of an example. I talked to you guys about like what's important in a shot is arc depth left right. And
Yeah.
that's objective because we know when and how the ball is going to go in with that information. What we're doing now is we're going to the other side of the ball because if you know what's happening on the rim, now the mechanics behind it with the player, you can start to adjust them because you have objective information. If you don't have the information on the rim, all the mechanics and all that becomes subjective, right? Because you don't know what it's really producing. You're
Yeah.
guessing, and you're guessing with your eyes. And so that's where like that stuff starts to take on a life of its own. And we look at innovation and also what transfers to the court through different activations or games that we can do that are also super fun, but they're also helping build. Like we create a new game called Three Ball. And what Three Ball is it's a shooting league, a shooting game, and we do leagues as well. And so it's three players on a court, and they're playing 4 quarters, and stats are up on the 75-inch screens that are above our backboards, and they're playing against teams in facility and online multiplayer gaming online worldwide.
Wow.
And so we're building leagues, well, what's exciting about this is not only can we do that with the youth, but we get to extend it to the adults. So think
I was gonna
about it
say, do you
like,
got an adult league coming here anytime soon?
exactly. So think about it like pickleball was to racket sports.
Yeah.
If you
Mhm.
look at basketball itself, people start to retire out of basketball between 25 and 30. And so then how do they actually take it in? They watch it. And so what we're doing is there's 175 million people in the US alone who are basketball enthusiasts, only about 25 million of them playing, somewhere between
Mhm.
25 and 30. But there's all these basketball enthusiasts who love to shoot, would love to have the social interaction, would love a moderate workout, would love all the stats and the competition. And we're gonna build that game and give these people that opportunity to come back to the floor. So real shots, real competition, real stats, right? It's super fun. And we
Yeah.
just launched a league where we had 100 teams playing in over a 6-week league with a company called Ball is Life, and it was an absolute hit.
Oh, wow.
I say you got over 50
Yeah.
league, like over.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, that's the beauty of it is, I mean, certainly when you get to a certain age, maybe shot range starts to come in, but it really is where, and it's like gender neutral too. So, girls are playing against guys it's, women against men. It's just super fun. You can have both genders on a team. It's a lot of fun.
Oh,
All
that's
right, yeah.
fantastic.
Mike, I told you I'm gonna geek out over this. So
Totally.
if you've got questions, you better ask them because
I know. I've got all sorts of questions too.
if you want to get us back on business.
Yeah, I know. We'll save it for the after show. So, moving Craig to a topic, at least one of the two topics that are staples of our show, because we think that they're so important in really trying to do more good through our business in the world, and that's like the topic of purpose. And really for a lot of businesses, they talk about community, and it's sort of like part of their brand story, but over time it just starts to sound somewhat like a spiel, right? Instead of something that they live by. And so perhaps when you zoom out of your facilities and the technology and the growth that you're experiencing, and it comes back to your why or your purpose, what would you say is really the deeper purpose that still sits underneath Shoot 360?
Great question. So, look, I think years ago I retired out of coaching because I had been in business with my father and he got sick, and so I had to step out of coaching to come and help with the business interests, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was also coaching college basketball at the time, and so I was gone recruiting a lot, and my kids were getting older, and I was like, man, I don't want to miss like them because I had to be on the road recruiting a lot, going to games. I think there's a lot of guys who do it for a lifetime, but for me, it was more of that phase of my life. I needed to make that decision for me. And so what ended up happening is as I stepped out, I always knew I wanted to be back in the game. And I talk about this often when we have what we call a discovery day and we bring in potentially new franchisees to hear kind of the origin story.
Mm.
And what I share with them is in 2008, we had a bunch of development and that was going on, and the real estate crash happened, and
Yeah.
the bank problems and all that, and we survived it, but we barely survived it. And so when we came out, we were getting stronger and bouncing back like a lot of the people who were able to stay in did. And then I realized one day I walked upstairs into our what I call our bonus room, and my oldest son was in there playing video games with his basketball team. And it was a beautiful day outside, and I said, "Why don't you guys go outside and play on the court?" And they looked at me and said, "Nah, we rather play video games." And I walked out and looked at my wife and said, "Man, if we could create a gym like a video game, we'd have it made, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that resonated with me. But here's, as we started to go forward with it, a few weeks later, because it was resonating with me and I knew about some of the emerging technologies, I just kind of woke up with this idea. And I say this all the time. It was how my life experiences converged. It wasn't like, oh man, this guy's got great ideas. It was literally like, hey, I'm a basketball coach. I've built facilities with another company that I built with my dad. I was in construction. I was in sales. So all these things kind of just converge, and I always say the definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so I was kind of prepared in life and I had an opportunity and I stepped into it, and so I got lucky. But here's where I was going with this is that
Yeah.
as we looked at it, I think my wife and I were both at first pretty nervous about, okay, you got this idea, and now you're going to go launch into it. And we just come through this terrible, like to me, it was like, I'm the depression baby, right? That you heard
Yeah.
about with your grandparents or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I had to look at it from that standpoint. Like, I just couldn't get rid of that. But when I came out, when I was coaching, what I loved about coaching was I felt like it was a microcosm of life. I could take a bunch, 15 kids over 3, 4, 5 months and take them and say, how good can we get in this amount of time, and build that program. And so then, where I felt like I've always believed that what I said earlier, that the environment and the relationship you build is how hard your players are going to play, how bought in they're going to be, whether they're going to connect with their teammates, all those things, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that part of it, and I never wanted to give it up. And so when my wife and I started talking about it, we said, okay, this is a risk, but if you think about it, when I'm coaching, I can impact 15 to 30 players, depending if I'm high school
Mhm.
or college. But this could potentially impact hundreds. And if it went well, maybe thousands. And now, 12 years later, 14 years later, whatever it is, we're saying, man, this is hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
scaling towards that. And so that was the purpose. I was also very fortunate, to have I have a pretty strong faith, and so I knew that purpose needed to be part of who I was as a person, and this was where I felt most connected to people, was through coaching. And so the guys that I brought in that were kind of co-founders with me, they too had that same kind of purpose built into them. So
Yeah.
it was really easy for us to launch out with that purpose. And then it's really easy for us to keep that in the culture of our company, because it's who we are as people. If
Yeah.
I was honest about it, I would have been retired, I think, many years ago, if I would have just stayed on the track I was on.
Yeah.
But you get through life and you go, hey, what are the regrets? And you guys have all read it. Some of the regrets are, I just didn't, it's never, that I didn't take, or it's often that I didn't take enough risk. And I
Mm.
just don't want to look back and have that type of regret. And but I want to do it with something that I'm passionate about, believe in it, and that there's purpose behind it.
Yeah. And impacting so many people in a very positive way. That's
I think
great.
it's a good follow-up for the question I always ask. So I'm going to do that one right now is what role, Craig, do you think, you're talking about scaling and you're talking about impacting all these thousands of lives? What role does love play in all of this?
Man, great question, right? So that's the thing. I think I equate passion with love. Um, and so when you love something, you're very passionate about it. And I think that's a love today in our society. Unfortunately, we're probably going through one of the more cruel times in our society. And just because of the way that people are judged, and a lot of that is just because of visibility and polarization and all that. But I will say, you know, for me personally, and maybe that's why I love it, is that young kids are at their most impressionable time. So they're going to basically react to people that care about them, and they can see it in an authentic way. So not being afraid to love the game, but also love the people, is a huge piece of it. And I think you don't have to be religious to love people. You don't have to be weak to love people. It's probably the strongest thing you can do. So it fits into sports perfectly. And if you watch these, big athletes, and the ones that really build championship programs and legacies and impact over time, they're also the ones that build the deepest relationships. And there's few exceptions to that, but generally speaking, that's the case. So
Mhm.
I see love as a center point. I hope it is for us.
Yeah, I love that. Tulio, I know, as our producer says, he's got an audience question. Let's slip that in there, Tulio. I know we can do it before the time runs out. Will he let me? I guess not, Mike.
Maybe do the audience question. Well, yeah, no, we'll ask it in the comments and we will.
Oh, here we go. We got it. All right. How do you protect what makes Shoot 360 special as more locations open?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I think that, it is a good question. And here's what I'd say. It starts with the day that our business development team talks to somebody about who we are. And it continues on to when we say, this is someone we're interested in being a part of our brand, and they come out and they meet myself and our team, and including our CEO, Terry Michelson, who the reason I brought him on for all the abilities that he has for strategy and building companies, that public companies to private companies, is he loves the culture that we have and the purpose behind it. And I don't think you can hide that. And I think if people sense it and they're authentic about it, it's easy to keep that going. If you are just saying it like, yeah, that's an important part of what we do, but you can't express it and articulate it, then I don't believe people will really take that with them. And I think when people, it's easier for us, in all truthfulness, because of what I said. Sports is universal, like the arts and music, and it's with kids, and people care, and we're looking for the people who care. So when you find those things together, you can build something that's long lasting. I really believe that.
All right, we've got one more. Let's sip one more audience question in there. How do you hold high standards on every location without creating fear or pressure?
Yeah. So this is the best way for me to say it. By not having negative reinforcement. I had a kind of a mentor of mine tell me one time, when I was explaining to him about conditioning and how people condition when people don't do things well, right? And he said, well, why don't you flip it? And I go, what do you mean by that? And he goes, why don't you say that the best way to reach your potential is to be in the best condition? So the guys who work hardest today get to run at the end of practice to get more conditioning in. Why don't you flip it? And I never got completely there, but I got close in some of the drills that I put together to reinforce that. But I think you do that through a culture of encouragement. And you come in and you say, look, you can be, generally speaking, you can be honest with people if you build trust. But you can't build trust until you build a relationship. So once you have a relationship, then you can critique somebody and give them constructive criticism through what you said, really a kind of setting of love, or a backdrop of love behind it, that you care, that you want them to be better, that you want them to be successful. And I think if you do that, that's how you're able to keep everybody on track. It doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to get 100% buy-in across the board. But what I've found is, when you have that overriding kind of theme behind it, that those people will weed themselves out, and we'll replace them with ones that do believe in what we're doing.
Yeah. So funny. Like I know there was people that dreaded running red lines after practice, and it's funny, as much as you like maybe hated it, it's one of those things I looked forward to. So yeah, sometimes it's just people have that mentality. So Craig, for those who want to learn more about you and even Shoot 360, where would you like them to go and follow up what you're building?
Yeah, so we are, if you want to learn more about Shoot 360, shoot360.com is probably the place to start. There is some inquiry forms if someone wanted to be a franchisee or look into it. You could fill out one of those forms, and our business dev team will get right back to you. If you want to reach out to me, it's just craig.moody@shoot360.com, and I do answer all my emails, so happy to take any questions, or if I can be of help in any way.
That's wonderful.
Happy to do that.
All right. Thanks, Craig, for joining us. Thank you to our listeners for the great questions and joining us. And, look at your own organizations. Ask where you are simply running a system and where you are truly building a community. The difference often comes down to whether people feel like they belong in some way. So consider that. And thank you for joining us today on the Bliss Business Podcast, and we will see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.